Hi there, it's Tuesday the 3rd of August 2021. This is our last week looking at the series that we've been looking through the summer, the one another scriptures of the New Testament. Loving one another, accepting one another, encouraging one another, serving one another, and this week we're looking at teaching one another. And in particular we're asking the question, well, how do we teach one another? Because as it says in Romans 15:14, we are competent as Christians to be able to instruct and teach one another. So how do we do that? Well, again, we're going to be looking at Jesus as an example. How did he teach when he was here on earth? And the first way that we're looking at that he taught is through the stories that he told, through the parables, as they're called often, through the stories which he told. Luke chapter 6, verses 46 to 49. Jesus says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? I will show you what he is like, who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice." And then he tells a story. He is like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. And when the flood came, the torrent struck that house but could not shake it, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete. Jesus was telling this story, and he was telling a story about two men, one who built his house on good foundations and one who built his house on not good foundations. And when the storms came, one house stood and the other house fell down. And this was a story, of course, that brought a meaning to its hearers. Jesus was saying that the foundations of our life need to be strong and solid. And if we will build our lives on the teachings of God and the words of God and the truth which God brings into this world, then we will survive the storms of life. And if not, then we will find our world collapses in some kind of a way. So he told all these stories. When we think back to our childhood, we often had parents or grandparents or babysitters or whoever who told us stories, perhaps bedtime stories. One of the ones I remember which we told our children was called Please Wonderful Mummy. And it taught something, which was that the children should say please when they want something. And it even went on to labour the point of to say they should say please wonderful mummy, or didn't say please wonderful daddy right enough, but please wonderful mummy. And now we can do that with each other, can't we? Not just as parents with our children, but even as friends together, even as fellow Christians in the church, even within our family. We can tell stories to one another and teach each other lessons through the stories which we tell, probably most often stories about ourselves. Perhaps we are listening to somebody and they're going through a situation that we've maybe gone through in life, and we can tell a story about what happened when we went through that situation and what we did and what we learned from it. Perhaps learning from our mistakes, or perhaps the learning was in actually doing what we knew was the right thing to do. And we can pass on learning to one another. It's a very simple and very easy way to teach one another, and quite an inoffensive way to teach one another, because you can teach a truth through a story that engages your listener without necessarily pointing a finger at somebody perhaps who is needing to learn something. So how about telling some stories this week? God bless you. Speak to you again tomorrow.